get into that, let's remind you that DTB and CT, you see how that just goes together? CT and DTB have something great on offer and sharing information for you this morning. What is that?
Well, what DTB is saying, and they've asked me to tell you, is this. They have a solution for you if your interest is in buying a house. And how they will make this possible is through a mortgage. And this is what they're saying about the mortgage. They're saying they offer mortgages to anyone who is self-employed, anyone who is employed, anyone who's in the diaspora. And they're saying the mortgage will carry with it a 9% interest. If it is a 10-year mortgage, if it's a 25-year mortgage, it'll be 9.75. And they're saying this is what we want to guarantee you, that there'll be no hidden charges. And if you pay ahead of the schedule that we've agreed on, we will not penalize you. And this, they're saying, is possible. But all you need to do is take a little walk to any branch that Diamond Trust Bank has, or just send them an email, mortgages@dtbafrica.com. And you will be able to receive communication and be able to discuss what it is you have, what it is that is available, and what it is that you will then be able to receive. But you must take that step. Get in touch with them.
There you go.
Yes.
1 million people get into the job market every year, and so far KCB Foundation under the Treasury program has helped 155,000 of them, and they've been able to connect with the skills that they need to enter into a job or get into a business. After being tooled, being skilled, they're then tooled, and then they're given what they need in terms of microloans to be able to start moving, and in very many subject areas are able to do this year on year. Another cohort is about to get in. And if you are between the ages of 18 and 35, or you know somebody who can plug into this program, you need to go to www.kcbgroup.com/foundation and find out how the Treasury program is affecting and changing lives today. And you can be part of that as well. All right, we're getting into Kenya's economic outlook, that discussion this morning. And our guest this hour is the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning, John Mbadi. Good morning, Waziri.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm okay.
You're all right?
Yes, you can see.
In fact, I can see that you're doing all right. Welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Thank you.
Many matters floating this morning. But before we get into those, I'm sorry, but you can't avoid this particular one where we put you to work as though you don't have enough to do already. But CT has proverbs, as you know, and he's in
today I will not respond to your proverb. But anyway, just
you will actually like this proverb so much. You will quickly tell me what you think it means.
So he'll tell you the proverb, and you tell us how you'd interpret that.
Yes, our proverbs for this week come from the Republic of Mali. This is the proverb. I have to learn to walk on 3 legs, says the hyena, for when I am old. Hyena starts with 4 legs.
Yes.
Human being starts with 2 legs.
Yes.
What happens to someone when they grow old? When I was telling them earlier on, old means older than me. Much older.
Yeah.
How do old people walk?
Like where we are heading. Obviously, you have to look for support.
Yes.
As you progress in age, advance.
Yes, advanced age. Yes.
Which I think is okay. It's natural, and supporting yourself is not a bad idea.
Yes.
Yes.
But what about preparing for that time? Is that a good or bad idea?
The perfect idea. Most important. Yeah.
I think the hyena understood this.
The hyena got it.
I have to learn to walk on 3 legs,
yes,
says the hyena, for when I am old.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great.
I
believe you now.
I told you you'd like the proverb.
No, I believe you now. You have earned my trust.
Or earned it. And I guess then what you've just said then now gives us an opportunity to segue into the conversation that we have this morning. And if we're looking into Kenya's economic outlook over the next, we're 6 months out, maybe actually less than that, 3 months to 4 months out from a new budget, and looking at how budget 2024-2025 has gone, and how we've then been able as a country to make good on what you stood on those steps and told Kenyans would happen over 12 months. The fiscal year is well on its way out. How are things looking? How have they gone over the last, 6 months or so from where you are?
Yeah, no, this is definitely a very tough year, the 2024-2025. And we are even coming from a tougher period. I want to point out that, remember, even though our economy is showing resilience, but remember, we just came out of the COVID period, which affected our economy. In fact, we had a negative growth in the economy. So even when we talked about economic rebound at 4.9% in 2022 after the COVID, it was a growth from negative. And when you grow from negative, it may be deceiving. You may show bigger numbers and it's deceiving. So when we just started to stabilize, coming from 4.9 to 5.6 in 2023, then coming to 2024, then we had the civil unrest of last year, which then took us back several steps. So managing the 2024-2025 budget has been very, very difficult, has been stressful, I must say. But I am happy that we are managing to come out of it. And looking ahead, I foresee a better running economy that is opening up, economy that is allowing private sector growth, because we had a contraction, especially on credit to private sector for the first time last year, at 1.4%. So that is not very good news. But I would say that things are looking up. Maybe when we get into the discussion, I will be able to expound and explain further.
Let's do it now, Waziri. What are some of those indicators that would give you that point where you say that things are starting to look up from your point of view before we say what Kenyans can actually see?
First, you start with economic growth. Now, in the first quarter of 2024, we had a 5% economic growth, which was a slowdown. Second quarter, it went to 4.6, which was another slowdown. It was a major slowdown in the third quarter at 4%. It has shown clear signs of rebound in the fourth quarter. Actually, we expect a 4.8% growth in the fourth quarter. So the average for 2024 is a slowdown in economic growth from 5.6 in the previous financial year to 4.6 in 2024. Now, going to 2025, economic indicators are showing that we can grow at no less than 5.3. In fact, we may do much better. So our projection for 2025 is higher. The reasons for economic rebound or growth is we have a diversified economy in terms of drivers. Agriculture, which historically has been the major driver to our economic growth, is now contributing to just about 22.8 to 23%. Other sectors have also caught up. One of them is the services sector, which is very resilient and showing signs of doing very well, the financial sector. The only three sectors where we had challenges in the financial year of the year of 2024, which showed negative or slowed growth were construction sector, and we know the reasons why. The manufacturing sector is also still struggling, and also the mining and mineral. So those are the only three sectors that didn't have economic growth in 2024. And our intervention is to promote those sectors in the 2025 so that we can realize a higher economic growth. Now, on the construction sector, there are two factors which contributed to this slow growth in that sector. One of them is the credit uptake by private sector. When private sector is when credit uptake by private sector contracted, definitely the construction industry was affected. Two is the issue which now has become very known to Kenyans of pending bills, that is the government's failure to pay those who have supplied goods and services. And then now the manufacturing sector again has also showed that slowed growth. So these are sectors that we are paying attention to. I want to indicate that we have been working on how to help the private sector, credit to private sector improve. One of the reasons why the credit private sector was low or contracted was because of the high interest rates. And this was contributed largely because the government papers were trading at very high percentage, and so interests. And so the banks, financial institutions found it more lucrative, more better or more value to loan to the government as opposed to loaning to the private sector. Now, you would see that progressively from the month of August when interest on Treasury bill, 91-day Treasury bill was about 15.6, 16%. It has come down to now less than 9%, which is a record. For a very long time, we have not had 91-day Treasury bill trading at that rate. That has led to a decrease in the CBR rates. Remember, around August, the CBR rate was at 13%. It has since come down to 10.75%. That is 225 basic reduction. And then now you can see the banks have followed in the recent weeks. In fact, about 2-3 weeks now, the banks have been reducing their interest rates. And this, like DTB, reduced by, I think, 2%. Actually, Equity Bank reduced by 3%, from 17.6 to 14.6, or 14.3. Then KCB has also reduced, Co-Bank has reduced, so major lending institutions have reduced. This is certainly going to benefit the private sector, benefit individuals, even household consumption, and that is going to spur economic growth in 2025. There has been the discussion and the talk that Kenyans say they don't have money in their pockets.
Yes.
One of the contributors to this has been when banks are not giving out money to the private sector, then certainly the private sector would not invest in expansion of their businesses, and so they cannot create employment. And again, also even the households, individuals don't go to banks to take loan to support some of their activities, and that clearly would starve or choke the economy in terms of lack of liquidity. So these are steps that we have taken jointly with the Central Bank of Kenya as a government to make sure that the economic fundamentals work, especially at this time that we have been able to manage inflationary pressures in the economy. So those are some of the interventions which, if you look in totality, and you can reasonably say that we are on upward trajectory. But there are certain risks that I may also point out.
Yes.
The risks here are as follows. Number one is the geopolitics. With the new administration in the US, we still are not very clear on some of the policy decisions that may be taken by that new administration, which may affect or harm our economies. And that may be a global concern. Secondly, we are still grappling with the issue of debts. Debt payment and debt management. Whereas we are really trying hard. If you look at the pattern, in 2020-2021 financial year, the budget deficit, and I hope we understand what budget deficit means.
Yes.
The budget deficit, which is financed through loan borrowing of externally and domestically, was 8.3% of the GDP. Now, the following year, that was reduced, that is 2021-2022, reduced to 6.2, especially after getting into the program with IMF. Then 2022-2023, it came down from 6.2 to 5.6. Then 2023-2024, it came down to 5.3%. Then somehow the government became very ambitious, overly ambitious, to try to reduce this percentage to 3.3%. And that led to almost near civil unrest, because you could only reduce this, or the strategy was to increase taxation or tax measures, and this was resisted, and it ended up we ended up losing that bill. But then now we had to revise the budget deficit from the earlier projected 3.3 to 4.3. If you look at our figures, we have since again revised that to 4.9. We are still below 5%, because last year it was 5.3, but 4.9 was occasioned by, one, the revenue collection in the first 6 months of the year, July to December, we did not meet target by about 93 billion. This is because economic activities almost came to a near stop for 2 months, 2.5 months.
Okay.
And then again, also the expenditure pressures. Remember, there are collective bargain agreements, CBAs, which were negotiated some years before, which now had to be implemented because they were pushed to the 2024, 2025. So we had to give in to some of the lecturers' demands by teachers, and even health sector. We had to give more money than what we had earlier budgeted for. So this pushed our expenditure a little
higher,
but also the revenue are depressed.
I have to come in here, Waziri, and ask the question that, looking at the numbers, looking at the forecast, looking at what the actual inflation is, when we talk about 4.9 going to 4.6, 5.6, those numbers, as important as they may be, we can't run away from what is actually happening. And somebody simplified it so well that for every 100 shillings that Kenya gets today, 70 of those shillings goes towards paying debt. So it's no wonder that there's very little money left to spend, where you have things like recurrent expenditure that have to be taken care of, salaries, everybody needs to be taken care of. Everything else must fit in that 30%. So it's actually not a mind boggler that there is not enough to go around for all the demands that are being made and for all the things that are lost on a daily basis. How then can you possibly manage where so much of any kind of income is spent on servicing debt?
I hear you, and I hear Kenyans, and I hear everybody who is showing concern that paying debt is a problem. It is true, paying debts is a problem, but we can't run away from it. We had contracted the debts. You have to pay them. So the only thing to do is to do two things, which we are doing at the Treasury. Two things, very critical to manage our debts. Number one is to reduce the budget deficit, because the only way to help in managing debts is to reduce the rate at which we are piling up additional debts or the new debts. So how do we do that? You don't look at the quantum. You don't look at the total. You look at the debt to gross domestic product, because what would support debt payment is economy of the country, economic growth. So we look at how much of additional debt as a percentage of gross domestic product are we incurring. And that is why I demonstrated that this has been on a downward trend. So it means that the rate at which we are accumulating new debts, which you can't run away from, because you have to provide services to the people. You cannot just stop providing services that people will now not go to school. We cannot support our healthcare. We cannot support our road system or water, etc., because we are paying debts. You have to continue providing these services. You have to still continue paying salaries. So the only thing you do is you slow down the rate at which you are accumulating new debts. And that I've demonstrated through the budget deficit. The other second way to manage debts is what we call liability management. And this is where the sad news is. And this is something that I think has not been spoken clearly for Kenyans to understand. We put ourselves in a situation where we took so many expensive loans over a period of time, and I would say largely between 2014, 15, 16, 17. Actually, it was worse between 2017 and 19. No, I will tell you today, And that's why I carried this book, because I noted something.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are various types of debts. We have the debts for multilaterals, that is IMF, World Bank, African Development Bank, and OPEC. Those are the four institutions that give us what we call multilateral debts, which are concessional debts, and which are the cheapest. Some percentages even go up to 1%. Then you have the bilaterals.
Yes.
The debts between us and other sovereigns like China, Italy, Japan. Japan is the cheapest among all of our bilaterals. You have the USA, although now USA, for the information of Kenyans, USA does not provide any bilateral support to our budget.
Okay.
In fact, all the support they've been giving us is off budget. They support civil society organizations,
development organizations,
support healthcare, but off budget. Now, there is the commercial borrowing. And this commercial borrowing is where we have the Eurobond, which everybody talks about. But there are others, which we call the syndicated loans, mostly from some financial institutions that are not multilaterals, but are lending us directly. You know, Eurobond, it's a bidding process. You get, you don't get, you get a portion. But for these financial institutions like TDB and Afrexim Bank, they are almost like commercial banks or whatever, this Eurobond, the way we get money from Eurobond. But then they deal with us directly. Now, the interest rates are very high for these syndicated loans. Now, that is why I wanted to just demonstrate to you something.
Yeah.
When you say high, what currency?
They are, of course, they loan us in
dollar
denominated, but very high interest rates. Because even Eurobond is coming in dollar denomination, but sometimes relatively cheaper compared to this. Now, the reason why I said we sometimes when I hear a lot of criticism is okay. But when I hear a lot of attacks, like nothing is happening, then I say many of us don't know really what we have before us. On Eurobond, we are in a terrible situation. Now, let me use that word. For the repayment of Eurobond, in a terrible situation. We are in this year of 2025. There is a Eurobond that is maturing in 2027 of $900 million. This money is supposed to be paid in 3 tranches. 300 in 2025, 300 in 2026, 300 in 2027. Then the following year, this is in May 2020, May 22nd of 2027, we are supposed to have paid this 900. Yes. Then February 2028, which is just 9 months later, we are supposed to pay 1 billion USD, or 1,000 million if you like. So 1 billion.
1,000 million sounds great.
1,000 million USD. And then in 2031, we have 1,500, that is 1.5 billion to pay. This is Eurobond. And then 2032, we have 1.2 billion. And then 2034, we have 1 billion to pay. So we have a break between 2034 and 2048.
Okay, I've got to ask you a question. First of all, Waziri, how do you sleep at night? Because these numbers that you're talking about...
This is just half of the story.
Exactly.
Before you ask me how I sleep,
even go there,
can I give you another one?
I already have a heartache, and I'm not sitting in that office with you. But those numbers that you're talking about are not... Let's even start from the first number that you gave, $900 million.
Yes.
I was hoping that you were going to say Kenya shillings, but you're talking about $900 million.
Yes.
Now, knowing that a burden of debt rests so heavily on the shoulders of Kenya, we look at the things that are happening in the country, and it seems as though these are two totally different entities. That this Kenya that owes this amount of money that's supposed to be paid, and this Kenya where we see extra money being spent on things where people will wonder, where is it coming from? The billions that we've been told, for example, that have been added in terms of State House, what was it, security? The billions that we see disappearing every day, and we're not quite sure where they've gone. It seems as though these two entities are operating void of one another and not behaving as people who have such a huge debt burden. In less than 2 years, 2027 is when $900 million is owed. And meanwhile, there are children who must go to school for which capitation, which, by the way, CS, you told us that by 31st of January, that would be sorted out. We have a health system which needs major help.
And it was sorted out.
We have counties who are crying every day about late money not coming in on time. Doctors have told us that they're going to be paid 70,000 bob from June, where they were told they would be paid 206. This is why I'm wondering how you sleep at night.
Yeah, I will explain, but please let me continue sharing the frustrations before I come to how I sleep.
Before she adds to the
Even as you explain about the Eurobond, I'm curious because we at some point took the other very expensive Eurobond to clear off the Eurobond prior to it, and at that point the government did know that it is that expensive. Common Kenyan is saying, you're saying we have a terrible problem. Did we not foresee it?
Now, that is the question you'd ask, and that is why I have made a decision that I want to try my best. Whenever time I will leave this office, I want to leave it better, so that whoever comes in does not go through some of the stresses that I'm going through. The time anytime I leave it,
the bad news, please.
Even if I leave it tomorrow, I want to leave it better. Now, the bad news is this.
That was not bad news.
No. This is not.
It's getting deeper.
It is getting worse. Now, let me just give you another example of syndicated loan. In this year alone, that one I will not even bog you with the data up to 20 because they are up to 2030. But this year alone, the month of September, we are supposed to pay $200 million to TDB. And we are also supposed to pay another 75 million euros to TDB. That is about $79 million. And we are supposed to pay the following month, October, $646 million. If you add that, it will give you $925 million. Then add another $27 million. That takes you to $952 million. So this must be paid in this October. That's almost $1 billion. Besides the Eurobond I'm talking about.
Okay.
And this goes up to 2030. Now, that is the kind of pressure we are in. Now, you asked me a question on the disconnect between these numbers, which are showing that we are at a very bad financial position, vis-a-vis the usage of public resources.
Absolutely.
And I cannot deny that there is wastage still in government. The best approach to this is to get our systems right. I know there have been attempts previously, but one of the most important critical step for us now is to have a system of managing our procurement, because that is where we lose a lot of resources, and also in budgeting. So what did we do? We have come up with, for this year, what we call zero-based budget. You have to justify every shilling that you ask from the Treasury, as opposed to incremental budgeting. Two, we are rolling out e-procurement, which I expect to start operating before the end of this quarter, that is the end of March, but will effectively now cover all government departments by latest July 1st. We have also moved to this now technical accrual basis of accounting, now from cash basis, so that we can capture all commitments of government and all revenue that the government should have. And also we are rolling out the Treasury single account, so that we don't have many accounts kept all over the place. Now, these are some of the efforts that we are taking. In terms of budgeting, you asked me that we are putting some money. By the way, do you know that in a State House, in the this year that is coming to an end, we removed a lot of budget lines from State House, including the so-called confidential expenditure. What now State House has is generally operations and administrations to help the State House run the presidential activities and such like. The issue of renovation of State House, I think that has been talked about. And again, by the way, State House had reached a point it was even leaking. So maybe one can question the extent of renovation, but you cannot question whether we needed some facelift of that facility. Unless we, and you know that this is where we host all the delegations, serious international delegations.
But Waziri, this amount of 5 billion shillings that was increased went to salaries, travel, and entertainment amid a push for austerity in government.
Yeah, I will explain to you.
Where does that
do you
go?
know when we in an effort to employ austerity measures, it's not just State House alone. All departments, we made a mistake. We cut across 30%, including salaries. You can't cut salaries 30%, including rent, which have already been negotiated. So because of the pressure, and there was no time to look at the numbers again, it was decided cut across. So we are rationalizing the budget 2024-25, especially personnel emoluments, we must restore. Because you cannot tell me that when it reaches April, you will not pay me a salary because you had reduced the salary by 30%. So in future, when we'll be rationalizing budget, there are certain lines that we will not
that 30% may be the only money somebody's taking home after the many deductions they have, the personal loans they have, because by law, it's that is the amount that they will be allowed to keep.
Yes.
Before you proceed, you've talked about syndicated loans and all this, but we also borrow internally, locally.
Yes.
Domestic.
Where are we with this domestic borrowing?
The domestic borrowing and external borrowing is almost balancing at 50-50.
Yes.
But we right now have about 5.6 trillion in domestic borrowing and about 5.1 trillion. The numbers may not be exact for external borrowing. So domestically, we are borrowing. Domestically,
Do we have pressure with this domestic borrowing? Similar
not,
to the
not
ones you
so
mentioned?
much pressure, because in domestic borrowing we have a way, most of the domestic borrowing we roll over the borrowings. When they mature, we again offer treasury bills again and roll it over. So mostly you'll find domestic borrowing is a rollover. Fortunately for us, we are now rolling over cheaply. What do I mean? If you borrowed a year ago money, let's say the 91-day treasury bill is 3 months. If you borrowed it at 15.6%, and now it has come to mature, and you are borrowing at now 9%. So you save, because you are financing an old, expensive debt with a new, cheaper. That is why we have saved about 24 billion on interest and payments to domestic borrowing for the financial year 2024-25. That is the advantage you gain when you manage your economy better, to reduce the rates at which you borrow. If the economy is not managed well, and the rate, it had reached about 18%, remember, at one point. And actually I was saying the government was borrowing from the public like Shylocks. Because if a government is borrowing at 18%, it is crazy. Government is should be treated as the most less risky borrower. Now, if they are borrowing at 18%, how would Muga and myself, I wanted to say you, but then I realized it would be very unfair. Both of us may be more risky, because our credit worthiness could be suspect. We don't know whether you will still be with the standard group for next month.
Yes.
So we have tried to manage the domestic borrowing in a way that now the interest rates have come down, and so we are borrowing cheaply, and we will still continue to borrow in the domestic market. It's also good for business, okay? But again, that question cannot get out of the table.
Right.
We just have to manage it. And I see, for myself, I am looking ahead and seeing we must manage between now and 2034. It may look very far off, it's 9 years, in a way that now, after that, this country the economy of this country, we should not be worried again about the pressure of loans. But between now and about 2034, my friend, I would be lying if I said that things are going to be easy in the front of managing debts. We just have to work around debt management in a way that is sustainable.
Waziri, even as we listen, and of course this debt is existing, someone would say the burden shouldn't fully fall on the Kenyan household. I remember your remarks most recently saying there are certain tax law amendments introduced at the end of 2024 which have eased the financial burden of Kenyan households to ensure economic liquidity. And for the sake of the listener today, perhaps you break down those particular law amendments, because it's important that Kenyans understand which amendments you're referring to that have so far eased the Kenyan households, and how have they actually, done that? Does it come to your table that it's actually working for the Kenyan household?
Doris, I hope I've got
it. Is Doris.
Doris.
You're right.
Will you be ready in the next 1 minute to go through, for us to go through the numbers together so that you can see?
For the sake of the
viewers. Reason why I say so is sometimes it is human nature. When things are, if something negative has happened, we talk loudly about it. But any small positive thing is muted. The truth is that the tax laws amendment bill of December brought some relief. And I will demonstrate to you. So before Kenya Kwanza government came to power, now I think it should be called broad-based. Before it came to power, there are certain tax levies which were not there. And this is what Kenyans have been complaining about. This levies is housing levy and the SHIF, social health insurance fund levy. These are the two. I know people are also talking about NSSF, but NSSF, the law was passed in 2013. It's only that it was suspended. Now it's naturally, unless you amend it, it's being put into use. And again, the NSSF contribution, in my view, is an employee's contribution. It's when you retire, it will be beneficial to you. Now, these two combined is 4.25% of your salary. 1.5 and 2.75. If you're earning 100,000, the additional levy that you are giving the government was 4,250. Correct? There is something I will remove from this and deduct from this. But this is what you are losing. However, now this money, if you didn't give it to SHA and you didn't give it to housing, you would have earned it less 30% if you're earning 100,000. Because there was tax on it. So that tax, so in a sense, what now you are paying after the amendments that we brought, because initially this was not being excluded from tax. It was again taxed after you have already contributed to SHA and housing levy, then you are again paying 30% of it. Now, we have removed the tax element. So this money, you are receiving only 70%. 4,250. So you are receiving only 70%. So this is the amount you are losing now with my amendments or with the Treasury amendment. 2,975. However,
that is the amendment in which?
December.
Okay.
December
which was sent to on 27th of December. Okay. Instead of paying 4,250, you are paying now 2,975. Okay. However, this is not the total amount you have lost with this new regime, because before this new, I don't want to call it regime, it's a new government. Regime is, I'm told, dictatorial. Well, this new administration, you are paying 2,975. But in the old administration, you are paying 1,700 if you're earning 100,000 on NHIF, which now you are not paying. So in a sense, the only amount that you are paying is 1,275 more. if you're earning 100,000.
Okay.
In fact, if you're earning 60,000 and below, you are not losing anything.
So
That is
essentially
a
what
fact.
you're saying, Waziri, is that you've put another 1,000 and some odd shillings in people's pockets.
Yes, and left you suffering with for only 1,200. If you're earning 100,000, if I calculated 60,000, for example, can we just quickly 1 minute do
Yes,
the 60,000? If a Kenyan is earning 60,000, they would have paid tax of 4.25% on these levies of 60,000.
All right.
Yeah, that is 2,550. But with that amendment, already if you are earning 60,000, you have reached the tax bracket of 30%. So meaning with this amendment, you are only losing 70%, which is 1,785. But you are paying housing, NHIF for 1,700. So you are only losing 85 shillings. That is the reality now. I hear people talking about Okoa payslip.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm already acquiring the payslip. It's only that people don't talk about it. I have put in the finance, in the business law, in the tax law amendment bill of December, which became law on 27th of December,
Yeah.
this relief. But besides that, something that has never happened in this country
What's that?
is that when you are leaving standard group as a pensioner, you used to pay almost 30% of whatever you earn as pension or gratuity, terminal gratuity, to the government as taxes. That has now been removed.
Completely.
Zero. You take anything that anything accumulated in your pension as a whole, 100%. Is that not positive? That has never happened in this country. It has happened for the first time.
Okay.
So as we say that the ordinary Kenyans are hurting, you should also appreciate that there's some step that has been taken.
At least a step to the tune of 1,700 shillings.
Yes.
Let's look at a bigger number, shall we, Waziri? That as of June 2024, June 30th, 2024, the amount of pending bills was over 698 billion shillings. Pending bills.
Pending bills for to the government?
I'm going to split that. National government had pending bills of 516 billion. County government pending bills of 182 billion shillings. Number one, why is this number so high? And number two, when are those who are owed this money going to be able to get what is owed to them? We believe that there was a committee that was put in place, across to then see, let's take a look at these bills, whether it was at the county level or national level, to say if they are all well documented, then we'll start to pay those out. But this number is staggeringly high and it continues to increase. When will this issue of pending bills actually be sorted out?
First of all, to stop the increase in pending bills, we have been very clear that all MDS must respect the law, the Public Finance Management Act, and I pride myself as one of the drafters of the Act. As a consultant, actually, not as a member of Parliament.
At that time.
At that time. I want to say this, that this must be respected. We have communicated to MDS. Pending bills become the first charge. That is on paper, but is never implemented. Now, the accumulated pending bills that you are talking about are so contentious. That is why the committee was formed. And the committee is completing the assignment by end of March. However, they have given some preliminary report to us. They were the pending bills that were submitted to the committee was amounting to 665 billion shillings. However, they have reviewed bills worth 474 billion shillings, and they have only cleared 206 billion. Chances are that a lot of those bills are
Will the
fictitious.
206 billion be paid?
Will the 206 billion be paid? Yes.
When?
We have. So let me explain. The 206 billion, have been accumulated over the years.
Yes.
So if you have to pay them, you have to plan for
Yes.
their payment and within the fiscal framework, because we are not also going to stop running as a government to pay pending bills. So what we are going to do, we have analyzed the pending bills. 95% of these bills, of the 206 billion worth of bills, are bills between 1 shilling and 10 million. So as a government, we've said we will give priority to these bills. However, we cannot start paying until this committee completes its work end of March. So immediately they finish and give us the final data. We are going to embark on paying bills, and we will start with the MSMEs, these small business people. Road sector, already there's a strategy. I think today we are likely to get some resources.
Today being Thursday.
Today, Thursday.
Okay.
So if those, we are trying to utilize some of our the fuel road maintenance levy to help solve this problem. So we are likely to get about 42 billion between today and next week. This is going to help reduce the pending bills on the road sector. We are also going to make sure that in the next budget, we factor in pending bill as an economic stimulus, so that at least there is a portion of our budget that is targeting the pending bills, and we have so the pending bills may not be wiped out in one financial year. I would be dead lying if I said that, because even if it is just 206, if you put 206 in our budget, you have to stop some activities. And Mughal, remember, universities alone require 107 billion shillings to run in a year. We gave them only 79. So we have a problem. Education, you have asked me, although you are asking me about capitation.
Yes.
What is the problem with capitation? We had 48.8 billion to pay. Out of this, 4.6 billion, 4.5 billion was for free primary education. That is the first term, which is 50%. Now, this 4.5 we paid in full. There is 15.1 for JSS, which we also paid 100%. Then 28 billion for secondary. This we paid 14 billion, which is 50%. And the term has not ended, so we will make sure that we pay.
There's also 64 billion over the last 5 years, which was not completed in terms of capitation. CS.
You see, let me be honest with you. Now, who do you want to pay that money for?
The Kenya government.
Why? You pay the schools.
What? Do you know what happened?
If the combination was not released.
Let me explain to you what happens when that doesn't happen, CS. Is that when capitation that's supposed to be released to schools does not go to schools, do you know who now has to bear the burden to keep the children in school? The parents. Because schools come out and then they say to us, you know what? We have not received 1, 2, 3. We're going to ask you to add another 30,000 per year. So we end up doing that when capitation, and we're talking about public secondary schools, not the private schools.
Let me not lie to you. That's a pressure. If you put the government to, we will have to borrow more.
It's budgeted, CS. This is money that's budgeted in the education budget in the budget for the country.
Understand our budget. Our budget is cash basis. If a financial year has ended and you didn't pay it, there is no money. We don't keep money somewhere. And I will explain this to you. Just take it this way. If the parents were forced, and I'm sure, and I know, because I've been a member of parliament.
I can tell you I'm one of those parents who every year has to add an extra 30,000 shillings because the school can't operate.
If we give the schools that money, will they refund you?
Your child gets an education at the end.
No, but will they refund you?
They don't.
So what we should say is that going forward, let us make sure that all the money budgeted for, and that is why I am releasing all the money, are released. But telling us to go and pay money that was supposed to be paid in 2020, where is it going?
Waziri, the question here and why it's important. If we segue and give the example of the problems we have in the health sector, and we talk about the debts that were incurred with NHIF, it will be the same story. Services were provided, money was anticipated, payments have not been made. You see, that you have a plan is a good thing. I would take this discussion and ask the commitment to keeping the promise made in the plan. How can we rely on these promises? Because if there's a plan and there's a promise and it is kept, most of the noise that we hear will reduce significantly.
So let me respond, Muga, because I think maybe we are not understanding each other. For the NHIF and SHA is a different story. For NHIF, we have debts to these hospitals. It may be contentious how much is owed to them. And by the way, the problem we have today under SHA in terms of paying private hospitals is not SHA problem. It is NHIF problem. And that is why we are to move from that problem which was not, that system which was not functioning, to another one. Now, for schools, it's a different story. Just like if we budget for maintenance of our vehicles in government, and we don't maintain them because there is no money, you will not again put money to pay to maintain vehicles which were supposed to be maintained in 2020. What I am saying is, yes, we were supposed to give schools some money. We didn't give them. You don't have a budget for that. You cannot cover arrears for which were supposed to be paid to schools in 2020. It is not there. That
so
money
why
is not
budget
there.
with money that you know is unavailable?
And that is why
Yes.
now, and that is what I'm responding to you, that now we are not doing that. Look, 2024-25, we had budgeted that we were going to collect ordinary revenue, 2,631,000,000. We have revised that downwards to 2,538,000,000. Why? Because we have realized we will not collect that money. We are now more
Prudent.
realistic. So we have even revised downwards the budget projection on revenue for 2025-2026 by 183 billion downwards. I have to admit that we have been living a lie. We have been over budgeting. We have been projecting revenue, and it is not just national government. Even the counties are over projecting own source revenue. So we have been budgeting with money that we cannot.
So tell us simply.
realize.
So now what are we doing? We're going to be living within our means.
We are going to live within our means, and that is why we are revising downwards the revenue projection so that we are not unrealistic, and we budget with that money. If it is exhausted, we say the money is not there. What do we cut to fill in the most critical segment? So that is what we are going to do. If we need money in education, we provide what we can release, but not what we can theoretically release. We want what we can practically release. The previous years, they over budgeted money that could not be released. And that is why that debt accumulated. Now telling Mbadi in 2025 to release money which should have been released in 2020 to schools, that is not possible.
So does that therefore mean if we're living within our means, we will not need to borrow?
No. We have to borrow, Muga. With our ordinary revenue, we can't sustain this economy. Otherwise, we will just stop development.
How much do we need to borrow?
How much do we need to borrow? It varies every year, depending on our needs. Now, for this year, this financial year,
our needs have to fit into what we have.
For this
And
financial
we know
year,
what we have.
for this financial year,
Yes.
we are borrowing 800, okay, 852 billion.
Yes.
Next financial year, it is coming down, okay. And if you check the trend, but I told you, check the borrowing against GDP. That is the most important. And I've demonstrated how we have been coming down and the strategy we have in the medium term. Muga, medium term is like 3 years from today, 3 to 5 years. Now in the medium term, we want this percentage to come to 3%. If we realize this, all these stresses going forward will reduce. That is the strategy. But you see the problem now, Muga, you know you
Yes.
are also contradicting yourself.
How?
You are the same ones who are complaining about borrowing. And you are putting pressure on me to spend more. How do you spend more? You want me to pay.
Our time is actually coming to an end.
Yes, but
actually, you know where the pressure comes?
Yes.
The pressure comes in asking government to do what it said it was going
Exactly.
to do.
That's
And
it.
I can't go beyond that because our time has come to
But
an end.
let
But
me
I think
a-
that's one
let-
thing to
let
remember.
me ask
That
you.
government to
Let
do
me ask
what
you.
it said
But are
in
you-
the budget when you stood on the steps and you said you were going to do this, that you just do what you said you were going to do. And that's it.
If money is not budgeted for again in our system of budgeting,
Yeah.
that lapses.
I hear you.
Yes.
John Mbadi is the cabinet secretary. All right, and even as coming to an end, we need to continue to have this conversation with you. We want you to come back and share some of these things with us because it's necessary.
I will come back.
So please, give us your forecast. We have maybe 2 or 3 minutes to go. Give us your forecast in terms of how you see things realistically looking into the next 3 months, and then into the next year, where you've already given us a 4.2 trillion shilling budget forecast?
Yeah,
in 2 minutes.
Realistically, looking ahead, I see a better economic growth and better economic prospects. They have started showing. The numbers, they say, don't lie. When you start seeing that credit, the interest rates are falling, the inflation is falling. By the way, let me ask you, as I finish, there were times when the issue of cost of food was in everyone's lips. That has reduced. There were times when you go to the supermarket and you are restricted that sugar, you can only take 1 packet of sugar. Kenya is now producing almost sufficient sugar. We produced 61 bags of maize in a million bags of maize in 2023 compared to 30 the previous year. That is double. Look at the milk. KCC is now taking 220,000 liters every day as opposed to 100,000 in 2022. And this is because of intervention. We gave KCC money. We gave 3 billion to support them. Yeah, we have given money to coffee, 6 billion to support coffee. We are moving the production of coffee from 51,000 metric tons to 150,000 metric tons. There are a lot of things that are happening. A lot of things positive, progressive. The fundamentals are there. Our reserve is now almost 5 months to cover. We are not exposed at all, even to external shocks as a country. So our shilling has stabilized. So what else can the government do apart from making sure that those fundamentals work? We cannot get out of our problems in a day. In fact, I was even asking, I saw the former deputy president saying he wants to call a salary. By the way, he left the pay slip of Kenyans worse than it is today. He was in office when those pay slips were worse than now they are. We have made improvement in the pay slips in his absence. So when I see,
he was the factor.
He was part of this. So let us not try to be like angels when we are outside the government. Yeah. But anyway, I understand them. That is the work of an opposition. Even me, when I was in opposition, my work was to look at the bad things in government. It's not my duty to sell government if I'm in opposition. But it's now our duty also to put facts across the table like I'm now putting them. We may disagree. Things are not rosy, but we are moving there.
Cabinet Secretary John Mbadi, the CS Treasury and for National Planning, has been our guest this hour. Thank you for being here, CS. We're looking forward to another conversation in the near future about how things are actually looking. So it's always a pleasure for you to honor our invitation to be here this morning and speak to Kenyans about the true nature of things.
Thank you.
Asante Sana. Thank you very much. We continue with more conversations. It is now 4 minutes past 9.